The opinions expressed on the Custody Queen Show are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for personal, professional legal advice. The persons discussed are fictional and not based on actual clients.
Thought it was love, had kids in between. You can count on us, we're the Custody Queens. Yeah, you can count on us, we're the Custody Queens.
Good morning, Go Country. Today we have the privilege of hosting a remarkable guest on our show. And I know I say this every week that we have an amazing guest, because we do. I love all of our guests. But I love when my personal life and my professional life get to come together. And I get to have Ron, who is not only one of my dearest friends of probably close to 2 decades, but he is also not your average mortgage broker. He is one of the most hardworking mortgage brokers that I have ever met. And I can tell you, in Sam and I's line of work, I am very stingy with my referrals. I only refer them to people that I know are going to get the same treatment and service as if I were giving it to them myself. So today we have Ron Sequeira, mortgage broker and artist.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I need that intro like every time.
Kristen's really good at
That's
it.
incredible.
Yeah. If you're ever feeling low, just have her roll you
I'll be your
into the
hype
day.
girl. Be your hype girl.
I feel like I want to meet that guy.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
got a good
thank you.
outro too.
Thank you.
And I even forgot part of my intro because I have to, go further. But in addition to being one of my dearest friends and a leader in his profession, something that is also very near and dear to my heart is mental health awareness. And Ron is an advocate for mental health and has sat on the board of directors for Rose City Counseling since 1999. He's received multiple awards and recognition for his dedication to mental health services by the city of Pasadena. And I am super proud of that because I think it should be something that everybody talks about and educates themselves. And I want it to be something that is not ever judged or looked at, but something that we are awarding and applauding for people to becoming more aware. So welcome, Ron.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow.
All right, Ron. Well, before we get into all things Ron, which we were talking before the show, and I'm already a fan because we both apparently have wiener dogs. So there's that. We'll get into that. But before we get into that, we're going to do CQ Talk Box, which is an icebreaker that Kristen and I like to do. So, Ron, you are in the hot seat this week.
Wow. Right into it.
Right in. Okay, so Ron, would you rather have an unlimited supply of your favorite food, but never be able to eat anything else, or be able to eat anything you want without ever gaining weight?
Wow. I think I am such a creature of habit, and I would probably go for the first one and be completely happy.
You know what I was thinking when I read this? I said this is going to totally depend, at least, on men versus women, right? Like, for me, this is an absolute no-brainer. I don't think I like anything enough to not be able to eat whatever I want and not gain weight. I mean, that's like, I could have a charcuterie tray. I mean, you can eat anything you want plus extra and still not gain weight.
Unlimited? Wow, Ron.
Yeah.
I didn't know that this question was going to go here.
I know. Well, I tell you, I can put down some food.
Okay.
No, Ron can't.
I can put down some food.
But he is like the most disciplined person I've ever met. Like, we would go on vacation and he will find a CrossFit, or he will find an Equinox. Like, and
That's hilarious.
he does not deviate from his routine, which I can respect. But then we can also go to In-N-Out, and I'm like, where the heck does it all go?
You order like 5 hamburgers?
Not 5 of them,
5
but
by 5.
I just load up
just
the
keep stacking
the
them?
meat and the cheese.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
What's your favorite food?
My favorite food, tacos.
Yeah.
Hands down, tacos. If I'm gonna go for anything for the rest of my.
Yep, a lot of different variety there.
And that's what I was thinking. I was like, I love tacos, and I think I could eat tacos every day. But I don't think I love tacos as much as I would like to eat and not gain weight ever.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed.
And I like cheesecake too, so.
Yeah, and I just have commitment issues. Like, there's no way I could be like, I'm just going to only have this forever.
Yeah,
that would
I
freak
love
me out.
options.
Even if I would enjoy it, I would just... So, yeah. You can see that I have commitment
No.
issues.
I guess I could relate with that.
It's true.
I could relate with that.
All right. Next question. Would you rather have the ability to instantly master any skill you desire, or be able to instantly fix any mistake you've ever made?
Wow. Okay. So, I think there is a knee-jerk reaction part of me that would be like, let me go back and fix the things that I've made mistakes on. However, I think there's something to be said about being a master at a skill. And I also, going back to the other side of it, is that's how you grow, is by making mistakes.
Right.
So
That's exactly what I was
think
gonna say.
as much as I can look back, and too often I look in the rearview mirror too much. But I think that's shaped who I am today.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when you first read it, it's automatically, of course I would want to, fix mistakes. But I think as bad and challenging as those mistakes are when you're in the moment, and regret or shame or embarrassment or whatever it is, I truly think that that's how you grow as a human, and you learn from those mistakes. My dad always said, don't worry, you'll have a bunch of scars, as you go through your career or life. And, he would jokingly say he had a bunch of scars on his back. And I didn't really truly understand it until you start getting scars yourself. And obviously that's, I'm not talking about actual scars. I'm talking about mistakes that you have made personally, professionally, that leave a mark that A, you never repeat, and B, you never forget. But
Yeah.
it's those scars that make you who you are.
No, I agree. I think too that as uncomfortable as mistakes can be, they lead to greater processing of what happened, which is helpful for growth. So, I think the question's a no-brainer, you guys.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
And one of my, not a mistake, but in your career, I remember when you start litigating, you'll never make those mistakes twice, whether it's not being prepared on every single thing or not having the right motion, a copy of it. But I promise you, you won't make those mistakes ever again.
It's interesting. I think two things. I think just as a way of connecting with people, right? I find that more often than not, I tend to connect with people just hearing the adversity that they've been through, right? The challenges that they've been through, what they've done to overcome it, or just sitting in that space with somebody, right? I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned. I want to fix things,
Fixer.
I'm a fixer. I want to make things better. And sometimes that's not what a person needs. They just need you to sit in the funk with them.
Right.
And they want to be heard.
Yeah.
And that's something that I had to really work on becoming an attorney, is just listening.
Yeah.
Because as attorneys, we want to be fixers too. And sometimes we can, and sometimes we can't. But, a lot of times people just want to be heard.
Yeah, and I like to think that as attorneys, what we try to do is not necessarily fix your problem. It's take it a step back from that and look at what your problem is and look at what your goal is and identify what things you can do to fix that. Because it's about empowering and educating, especially in our field, so that you can make meaningful choices. Because Chris and I say this all the time, but if you're doing your job right, sometimes you can't help it, but if you're doing your job right, you don't have a client forever, right? You want them to get out of the court process and move on with their lives, but they can't just rely on you to make their decisions for them. They have to sort of learn how to make them on their own and make good decisions and understand what effect that has with the law and their facts. And
what are the potential consequences?
Right.
It's like when you're telling someone, you go through all of the checklist when someone's hiring you. You need to talk to this expert. I'm not a tax expert. I need you to talk to a CPA. I need you to talk to a broker. Will you even potentially qualify for a refinance? I can't tell you that. I send them to Ron. But here's also the consequences of you posting that on social media.
Right.
You're going to get an instant gratification, but here's potentially what your consequences are.
Right.
Let me know if you think it's worth it. If you think about it for a night, probably not. You know, you
Right.
might end up with a restraining order. But yeah, some clients, some attorneys may want you forever because you're paying their rent. I can tell you, I don't want you forever. I don't. You know, I try to get people in and out of solving their problem as quickly as possible, and the court system is not quick. So sometimes that can be a couple years.
Right, especially with unreasonable opposing parties. All right, Ron, so how did you get started in the mortgage industry?
Wow. So I got started in the mortgage industry. I don't want to say by accident, but I was really young. I started when I was 19, and I speak Spanish, and I've always been good with numbers. My older brother is a real estate agent, so his lender at the time needed some help. So I said, hey, let me take it on. And I ended up in mortgage, and here I am.
And you
now,
never looked back.
25 years later.
Wow.
And yeah, I'll tell you, it's been a beautiful journey. It is, not that I know anything different, but I'll tell you just from experience, people that I've trained, I've taught, I've worked with, it is a humbling industry. It's, I've grown up in it, and, again, I was good with numbers. I could get a mortgage done, but I didn't know how to run a business in the beginning, right? And there's so much that you have to work on as far as just personal growth and discipline. Anytime you're an entrepreneur, an attorney, running your own practice, anything, the architecture's the same. You got to get, you got to serve people, the phone's got to ring. And a lot of that, you wake up unemployed every day. Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, you got to get yourself up out of bed. And so that's where I developed my habits and my morning routines, right? Like my morning is a sacred time because that's what allows me to get in that mindset. And it's,
When I imagine that the mortgage industry changes so often.
The highs are high and the lows are low.
Oh, yeah. The environment changes, the market changes, challenges that you're dealing with. You've got disruptors, you've got technology that's happening now, right? Big thing that's happening now, it's a big buzzword, is that NAR settlement, right, of how commissions are disclosed for real estate agents, who's going to pay that, right, So it's a constantly changing environment, and you can embrace the change. And if you embrace the change, you're going to be fine. If you sit there kind of stuck in your ways, and so it tests you, right? I mean, I think especially for me, I'm a creature of habit. I get into my systems and my processes, and then all of a sudden things change, and now I have to change.
So you just have to get used to the change. And I imagine being in it for over 2 decades, there has to be some part of you that kind of feels, okay, the change has to happen, so just keep going on, it'll work itself out. There'll be a new issue down the road, or a new industry change.
Spot on, there is. I will tell you though, it's always difficult. It's always difficult, it's always scary, so you always have to kind of navigate and, kind of check yourself and be like, hey, everything is going to be okay.
Right.
It will be okay,
right?
I think, it's interesting, I think with the rising interest rates that we've had here over the past couple of years, thankfully we're seeing some relief now, but it's been so different than any other time, right? Like 2008, there was a crash, and you have a little bit of opportunity. All right, people are losing homes, and as sad as that is, but maybe there's an opportunity to pick up a property at a discount. And now it's just so different because these rates have been like ticking up and ticking up and ticking up, but there's no inventory to buy. Right? People aren't going to sell and get rid of their 2-3% mortgage and go to a 7%.
Exactly what we've thought about.
So it's interesting. It's been kind of a slow burn, and it's like, whoa, well, what's going to happen? And the environment's changing. And again, that fear, I don't think ever goes away. I used to ride a motorcycle. Sorry, I'll tell you why I bring this up is you have close calls when you ride a motorcycle.
Right.
Especially in Mexico.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
I just got back from Mexico, and some of those motorcyclists, I was like, how are you alive?
It is insane. It is insane.
Literally, they tapped on my, doors. They're driving, that's how close they were.
When you ride a motorcycle, you end up having a lot of close calls. And it's not that the close calls slow down or stop the more you ride, you just end up getting used to them, and they don't faze you as much. So similarly, I think in mortgage, in this industry, it's a constantly changing environment, and I don't know that you ever necessarily let go of the fear, right? There's always a little bit of that anxiety, what's going to happen, but you just kind of understand that, hey, this will pass, and as long as you stay active in the conversations, you stay ahead of it, you talk through these things as in other areas of your life, right? Relationships, anything, right? Like, get ahead of it, talk about it. And
yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, with every industry, things change rapidly, but that's why it's so important for you to really have clients that go to you for your expertise. Because even if it's a new thing for you, it's not, the change is not new, right? So it's always important to understand that. And that's very true for Kristen and I as well. I mean, new case law comes down all the time. We get new judges, but we are experienced in understanding that things change, and we're sort of not go with the flow in that way, but we're ready for it. That's where the expertise comes in. And you've been in this industry now 25 years. So, this is just something for everyone, whether you're looking for a family law attorney or you're looking for a mortgage broker. It is so important and crucial to look for someone with experience in that industry.
Yeah, we get new judges a lot, like every 2 years, and not just one, usually multiple. And that's the hardest part, because you've had a case, say, for 4 years, right? And you've multiple filings, multiple orders. And then you have to reprove, get the new judge, familiar with the facts, and they may not see it the same way, or they may not like what your client's wearing or the way that you talk. And so you have to you almost feel like you have to reprove up all of the facts of the case so that judge agrees with the prior court's orders. But you just have to get to a point where you have to manage your own expectations, and you get a little bit immune to the changes a little bit. And I remember there was a time in my career too, I don't know exactly when it was, but the long nights, the stress, I'm never going to know enough, I'm never going to be that good, how will people pay this much for me? But when I stopped stressing about all the things that I thought I wasn't amazing at, and I started focusing on what I liked about the career, it became less of a job and more what I like. And I love the component, like what we get to do for Custody Queens, of really helping people. That's my passion, and kind of educating and guiding new attorneys and mentoring them and managing and building the business. Sometimes I think I'm far better at that than I am the litigator, depending on the day. But you have to embrace it, and if you like what you do, it's not a job. But there's still going to be good days and bad days, so you have to manage that yourself.
Well, it's funny, I'm picking up so many similarities, right? It's just managing expectations. I always say, like, it's really the critical part of what I do, is really just kind of laying out the road ahead.
Right. And
just saying, all right, this is what we're going to encounter, right? But it's interesting you mentioned, getting a new judge, because that's also the challenge in what we do. I might set up a game plan for somebody, but then you have the game of telephone, right? Because that file has to then go to a processor. And then that person has to interpret what your game plan is. Mm-hmm. Then it has to go to a writer.
Your math behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you get to this?
So, again, I think the real, when you deal with somebody that has experience, it's execution, it's understanding that, hey, that is something I'm going to have to run into.
Right. So
I always tell the team, like, we all practice by the same, my goodness, I'm losing the word here. Same MO, right? It's, hey, how can I make that next person's job easier, right? And the way that we set up the file is already thinking, okay, this is what the next person's going to need. And it just creates good relationships and a better execution of the process.
No, it does, because then you don't get the file and you're like, who had this at the last hearing? And it was probably me that did. Now Sam had the file right before you. It's going to have perfect notes and memos and attachments. Me, you might get some scribble and a signature at the end.
Kristen loves highlighters.
I love I am so old school. I
highlighter.
love the pen, the pen to the paper mentality. I'm still adjusting to technology. I would bring a pen and paper everywhere with a yellow pad and print it out. I still make them print all my emails if it's important. But yeah, you got to adapt. But when I say I talk to a new client and one of the spouses says, "Oh, I want to keep it," but they work part-time, and I want to set up their expectations, even knowing that I'm not a mortgage broker and the chances are this person will not get approved on their own. What are the potential options? Is there a co-signer, a family member?
And you're talking about keeping a house.
Yes, talking about keeping a house. I obviously know that I'm not the expert, but I want to start managing that person's expectations before I even send them, to Ron, so that they are already aware of the big possibility that they're not going to get approved, and they have to start thinking, there's a good possibility we're going to have to sell this house.
So I was just going to say, and that's a good point. I always tell people, whether you've got any type of legal divorce situation involved, or just planning to purchase a house for the first time, right? Like, the whole process benefits from preparation, right? So the earlier that you can start that conversation, the earlier you can map it out. I'm a big fan of, like, hey, get me on the phone, right? Get me on the phone with your CPA. Get me on the phone with your financial planner, right? Get me on the phone with the attorney. That way we can, because more often than not, and I think of a CPA often, right? Because we're trying to do two opposite things. CPA is trying to show as little income as possible, right? Write-offs so that you're not paying so much in taxes. And we're trying to show as much income as possible to qualify. So there's like a tug of war that's happening.
It's a fine line.
Now, what's awesome is, we've got tools and programs and things that we can do that could really just kind of allow us both to accomplish the same thing, maybe with a couple tweaks. But again, that's not going to happen if that conversation doesn't happen. Early,
Yeah, Sam and I work too with some high level, obviously professional athletes and such. And it's amazing how little some of these people know about their own, plan. But B, those conversations with the professionals direct to direct are so important. So when you have a middleman construing or misinterpreting what they believe, is the facts or the numbers that sometimes are just clearly off, that middleman's got to go sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes as hard as it is, you have to know, even if it's bad news, if you have options and you want to exhaust those options. But if you're thinking about it, especially from the context of a divorce, if we need to sell something or you're trying to refinance and buy the other side out, just kind of as Ron said, getting that plan together and getting a team involved is so crucial, because you miss one fact, you don't really understand the workings of a person's taxes. You might miss what could otherwise be a viable option for you to refinance. So it is important to get somebody that's qualified. It's not just anyone can get it done, no matter what, but the more experienced person you're dealing with, the more creative their potential solutions are for you.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're paying for. There's always someone that will give you a discount or do it for a lower percentage or a lower hourly rate. But I can't tell you how many times we get cases that talk to one of us and then hire someone that might have been a little bit less expensive, paid them a significant amount of money, and then they're in a worse place than they were when I talked to them. And now we have to try to not only move forward, but undo. Right. And so I'm a firm believer you get what you pay for, and you are paying oftentimes for someone's expertise, life experience, and creativeness with the options.
It is invaluable. And Sam, you mentioned, even if you have to deliver bad news, right? And that's, I learned this lesson later in my career, but I've really held on to it. I run at my problems, and I can't tell you how often, and until you have a situation that you're in where you've experienced that, and then all of a sudden somebody disappears on you, right? There's a problem and you can't get your lender on the phone. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, one of my mentors told me one time, hey, if you bring up the problem day one, mm-hmm. it's our problem collectively, mm-hmm. right? But if you bring it up on day 10 or day 14, then it is your problem, right, as a lender, right? Like, I sit here and I sat on information, and I understand it, right? Nobody likes to deliver bad news, but I always say
conflict, and you want to, I don't want to bring it up in the introduction.
Right. But it's, and that's, I always say, don't judge me by my wins, judge me by how I handle the challenges or the losses, right? Like, how do you behave when difficult things happen,
mm-hmm.
right?
How do you react? Yeah, I often say when there's potentially negative facts about the situation or that your client's done, I always say sometimes we want to take the wind out of their sails, and I want to bring it up, and people, someone will read it. Why the heck would you want to check the box for me to pay spousal support or child support? And I said, well, because you are already paying by paying this and this and this and this, and I think the amount you would be paying would be less. So let's get in front of it. Let's affirmatively ask for the court to make you pay child support instead of waiting for her to do it. And that's a strategy, and it doesn't work for everyone. But I have learned that when I bring up the bad news or the negative things that my client has done, it sounds so much better, and I'm controlling the narrative by them attaching horrible text messages or pictures and creating their narrative.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And just like what Ron was saying about going straight through it, you can hide your facts or your issue under the rug for so long until it comes out. And so the best thing you can do is get ahead of it from the beginning, realize what you can do, and realize what solution you may be able to come to. And, when we're talking about houses and, Ron, Kristen, and I all deal with this on a daily basis. I mean, this is a significant asset, maybe the most significant asset that you're going to purchase, maybe the most significant asset that you have purchased. And so this is not something where you want to look the other way and hope it all works out. Education and establishing expectations is the education of it so that you can make a meaningful decision for your life.
And not that it is a deal breaker, but having a mortgage broker that understands the divorce process or the separation. I'm not saying they have to have gone it through it themselves, but someone that has worked with two people that may be divorcing and understands, because there are some areas that you have to navigate that may not be the easiest. You might have two people that can't jump on a Zoom together, or there's an order that they can't talk. Having someone that has experience with the divorce or separation niche, or dealing with a high conflict situation like that, it makes the process so much easier, not only for you, but for your attorney or any other professional that's involved. And so I really think it's a benefit to recommend or refer my client to someone that has experience with dealing with these high conflict cases. And if you are in the LA area, or you are actually anywhere in Southern California, Ron is our guy. And Ron, how can they reach you? We have Instagram. Do we have a direct line?
So I'm old school. I'll tell you. I like the old school. I just like a phone call, right? But obviously I do have a
virtual code on your phone with it, which is the new.
I do. I have it, but I'm probably not the best at using it. But my direct line 626-893-4269. You can email me at ron@wefundla.net.
Say that again.
ron@wefundla.net. And we're also on Instagram. WeFundLA is the team. You'll get to see all of us there. We often say we hang out with friends, and we also do loans. So it's we got a good family over there.
That's a good mantra.
There you go. And if you missed any of that, we will make sure that we post it. If you are watching, you can watch this on YouTube, as well as all of our other shows. But, I love having guests on that are family to Sam and I. And like I said, I've known Ron for 2 decades. I can't believe I'm that old. We've watched our kids grow up together. But if you are looking to buy, refinance, sell, am I missing anything?
Anything involving
Ask a question.
The financing of a home, and if you want to chat mental health or the arts, anything, give me a call.
There you go. And if you're even thinking about something, maybe you're thinking about divorce 6 months from now, or you're thinking about buying a house, I agree with Ron. Let's get ahead of it and let's make that call. And Ron is a great listener. So thank you for joining us this Saturday and every Saturday on Go Country at 105. And we have really enjoyed spending this morning with you. You can catch us next week at the same time on the same station. And remember, let love rule.